Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today I am going to be prepping the car for my next drift event tomorrow. So tomorrow we've got a full-day wetpan event at Sydney Motorsport Park for Australian Drift Club. Just going to go over a few things in the car. I haven't had a look at the diff or the rear axle at all since I put the mini spool in, so I just want to have a quick look at it, just make sure everything's been fully tightened up, or make sure everything is still really tight. I've done probably 4 or 5 events. Haven't had any issues, but I just want to double check everything, make sure it's all tight and give it a good once over. I'm also going to be doing the spark plugs under there as well. Since I've got the alternator back in, we'll be getting should be getting a much hotter spark in there. I did take cylinder 1 out, spark plug out the other week while I was checking the alternator to see what was going on, and it was fouled. It wasn't terrible, it was just very carbony, so it wasn't getting a hot enough spark. It could be either not a hot enough spark or getting too much fuel in there. Too much fuel wouldn't surprise me because I'm not actually running an O2 sensor at the moment. Was having issues with the ECU and the car doing some weird stuff. The second I disconnected the O2 sensor at the suggestion of one of the guys that's been running RBs for years, it's run beautifully. It does mean it's going to run a little bit richer, but I just want to give the spark plugs a good clean. I'm probably going to take the MAF sensor off, give that a good clean as well. And just give it a good once over before the event tomorrow, make sure it's all good. I will be test fitting the new rims on the front as well, more just for size, just to see what the offset's like. Obviously, I'm pretty sure the offset's basically the same as what's on there, but just want to double check, make sure there's nothing that's going to foul in terms of hitting the coilovers or anything like that. So I'll throw those on and have a look as well. But yeah, come on, we'll get the car all prepped and ready to go for tomorrow. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is jack up the rear of the car. I do that by putting the jack under the main diff so I can lift the whole back section up together. Obviously have the front wheels all chopped up as well, just to make sure the car's not going anywhere. What we're doing here is just removing the rear wheels. Just want to double check. I haven't actually checked anything in here since I put the spacers and the locker in. I just want to make sure everything's all nice and tight. Take the spacer off. Make sure all the nuts, bolts, everything in there is all nice and tight. There's no signs of anything moving or wearing or anything weird going on. Okay, so onto the engine bay. First thing we're doing is cleaning the MAF sensor. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the airbox off. The MAF sensor is just after the airbox on the main intake pipe. Take the airbox off, make sure everything there is nice and clean. The filter's all good to go as well. The MAF sensor itself, we give a good clean with actual MAF cleaner. Please do not use WD-40 or anything else to clean the MAF. It is a very sensitive little piece of equipment. If you haven't looked inside one before, it's 2 to 3 very fragile, thin wires. If you hit it with anything other than MAF cleaner, you can damage it. They are very sensitive, so just be careful with that. Once that's clean, we pop it all back together and get ready to move on to the spark plugs.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Over. CBR Street Gang, this is Almighty. Standing by, over.
So with the spark plugs, to get into those, it is easier if you take the whole intake off, but that can be an absolute pain in the backside. It is a much bigger job. Nothing it isn't hard to do. Have done it before, but you need a little bit more time. This is kind of not a rush job, but I just want to get through everything nice and quick. I can get into the spark plugs. You'll see when we come to do plug 3 and 4, actually and 5 as well, we actually have to use a uni joint on the end of my extension bar, just to get in around all the intake bits and pieces. So starting with the spark plugs, obviously we worked from 1 through to 6. Some of these, the caps can be a little bit hard. If you haven't worked on an RB30 before, the actual caps that go onto the top of the spark plugs, they're quite long. The connector inside, it's actually fairly deep into the cap itself. They can be a little bit fiddly to get off and on, but just a little bit of time and patience and you can get it. A bit of practice helps as well. So once we've got those out, the other thing I am doing as well, just giving them a good clean. The car has been running kind of rich, so they have got a bit of carbon deposit on them. Whilst I've got them out, I'm actually gapping them all as well. So for those that don't know, gapping your plugs will give you a hotter or a colder spark. There is a kind of point where you can gap them too big or too small, and it actually has the opposite effect. It'll actually stop working. You sort of gap it out, and it sort of gets to a certain point. You can only gap it so far, and then you actually get diminishing returns on either heating or cooling the plug or the spark. I actually found that these were gapped down a lot further than I thought when I put them in. Originally they were gapped at about a 0.8, 0.85. I actually found, for whatever reason, when I've taken them out, they're actually gapped at about a 7. So whether the feeler gauges I had would just crap themselves, or I don't know, maybe I was drunk when I put them in, I don't know. But yeah, I've gapped them back out. I've actually put them out standard spec for these plugs. I'm using Iridium NKGs. The standard spec for these is actually a 1.1 gap. A lot of guys suggest on the around the RB30 and the R31 forums, a lot of guys actually suggest going to about a 0.8 gap. I've kind of split the difference and gone to a point, most of them about a 0.1, somewhere in between. Did run quite well. I found afterwards on the wetpan, it did actually run quite well, but yeah, sitting at a 1 point, it's about a 1.05, but basically a 1 mil gap is what I was aiming for. And it seems to work really well at the moment, so we'll see how we go. after that, pop it all back together, and time for a test.